Thank you for joining us today on About Fundraising, the podcast. Our guest today is Steve Latham, the founder of Donate Stock. Steve has been in startups and software and marketing and finance and data analytics and all sorts of stuff for over 20 years. He has founded and exited at least 2 startups while co-founding 2 nonprofits. He's currently focused on transforming charitable giving by making stock gifting accessible and easy for everyone with Donate Stock. We need that kind of help in the nonprofit sector. So thank you for coming up with this idea.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
So how did you come up with Donate Stock?
Yeah, it goes back to my own experience as a frustrated stock donor. 15, 16 years ago, a friend of mine who's a financial advisor told me about the benefits of stock gifting, namely that if you donate your appreciated stock, you can avoid the capital gains tax. You also get to itemize the current market value. So if you've owned NVIDIA 5 years, you may have bought it at $8 a share. It's worth $125 today. That appreciation is significant. If you sell that, you're going to get a big tax penalty. If you donate it, then you don't have to pay the tax, and the nonprofit doesn't because they're tax exempt. So you get to avoid the capital gains tax, and then you also get to write off the full value as long as you've owned it for more than a year. So I thought, sounds too good to be true, and I went, and pretty excited to go make a stock gift. It was a small gift to a scholarship fund that had given me a scholarship in college, and I discovered why very few people donated stock because it took like 2-3 days just to get initiated. It was such a hassle because I didn't know what to do. So I called the charity, and they're like, you need to call your broker. I called the broker, like, you need to fill out a form, but you need this information from the scholarship fund. So I go back to them and wait for them to get back to me. It was just, and then each time, it was just a lot of stops and starts. And then I had to eventually, like, fill out a form and print it and sign it and take it to my broker. And I'd like, this is bananas. This is just too much hassle. So that was the one and done. I was like, it's just not worth the hassle. And then, fast forward to 2020, I was actually in New York at the time, been there since 2011, and I was in the advertising technology industry, and we were kind of, the writing's on the wall, we were looking at an acquisition, kind of a final exit to get out of, this company I'd been in since 2010. And I thought, okay, now I can actually go do something I want to do, and that will make the world better. And I went back to my list of ideas, and at the top was stock gifting. And I did some research and found out no one had made stock gifting easy for a donor. So the light bulb was, wow, if we can make this easy, we could unlock a ton of funding for nonprofits, help people make tax advantage gifts, and do it like an easy button, like a PayPal application experience. That was the idea. Mm. So that was really what, kind of was the inspiration, the lightning bolt in 2020. And so we started working on it, and then the pandemic hit. And then there was like a higher sense of urgency because it was just, as you guys remember, it was just such a transformational time and very scary for a lot of people. I thought, wow, we really need to bring this to market because at the same time, the market took off. If you guys remember, like by end of 2020, the stocks were skyrocketing. The need for, outpouring for support was just, unprecedented. I think we had record charitable giving that year, 2021. And that was really, kind of what got us off on the start.
That's great. That's really great. It seems to me that small nonprofit organizations assume that their donor base doesn't have stock to donate, so they don't ask. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I think the data is pretty clear. There's so a recent poll from Gallup said there's over 100 million people in the U.S. that own stock. Latest number is more like 160 million. That includes people who have some ownership like stocks, mutual funds, ETFs, maybe potentially even an IRA or a 401k. But in terms of active investors, there's over, somewhere between 50 and 100 million. Like basically all of your major donors own stock. Most of your mid-level donors own stock. They just don't all know that it is a currency that they can use to support your organization. And that's the opportunity / the challenge.
Recently, one of my clients signed up with Donate Stock, even though a very small percentage of their donors may actually gift stocks. What convinces nonprofit leadership to work with Donate Stock?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So they normally work with us for one of two reasons. If they're a small nonprofit, this is again another kind of a surprise to me to discover that most small nonprofits really have a difficult time opening accounts with brokerages. They actually have policies against opening for small charities under $1 million in funding.
Mm.
Uh, because the data is historically high propensity for fraud, which means higher compliance costs, higher AML and KYC, like anti-money laundering, know your customer. There's all these costs that the brokerages incur from a compliance and a review standpoint to open these accounts. And the small charities don't receive the cash or the stock and then build an investment account. They just sell the stock and move the cash to the brokerage. So the brokers are saying we can't really charge enough to make it worth our while for all the costs incurred. So we hate this, but we can't service you. So because we found this out when we started, we were assuming every nonprofit could get a brokerage account. So we'll just send stock to their brokerage account. And then we realized a lot of them said we can't get a brokerage account. So that's where we actually then started our own donor advised fund, Donate Stock Charitable, to process the gifts for charities. So a lot of small organizations, we're really the access to stock gifting because we can process the gifts for them. They don't have to have a brokerage account. In fact, most of our clients don't. Then the larger ones generally work with us because they do get stock gifts. They know it's a very painstaking, manual, laborious process to try to process the stock gifts manually. And it's exacerbated by the fact that the donor's identity doesn't travel with the stock. So the donor who fills out forms for their brokerage assumes their name and information travels with the stock, but it doesn't. So all of a sudden, the nonprofits see all this stock hitting their brokerage account, and they don't know whose stock is whose, and they sit on what are called mystery gifts, which every nonprofit listening to this is probably who's received stock says, oh, we know what those are. You get stock in your account, and you're asking your development team or advancement team, has anyone mentioned donating stock? It's like, no, someone has our account number. They sent stock in. They assume we know it's them, but we don't know who it is. So we can't do very good stewardship. We can't go out and thank them, acknowledge them, and share our appreciation and tell them the impact they're having because we don't even know who gave us the stock. Meanwhile, you got a donor sitting there wondering, like, I gave you $50,000 in stock. Why am I not getting a note or a phone call or an email or just a postcard, something saying thank you? So it's a bad donor experience, and it's really challenging for the nonprofits. So the fact that we handle that for them, if they want to receive the stock, that's fine. They can receive the stock in their brokerage account, but we'll provide them notifications when the gift is initiated, a dashboard that makes it really easy to reconcile. For the same with the donors, we notify them when the stock is when it's submitted, when it's received. So they have transparency and notification. So they know you got my stock. I don't have to worry anymore because the shares left my account, and I don't have to wait for you to go take weeks to reconcile it to let me know, yes, you got my stock. So they recognize that it's a non-scalable, it actually has diseconomies of scale. It's one of the few things where the more you do of it, the harder and more costly it is. And that's because everyone donates a lot of the same stock. In 24, we just did all this analysis for our 24 donations. 4 stocks accounted for 60% of donations. So NVIDIA, Apple, Tesla, and Microsoft. Those 4 stocks comprise 60% of the proceeds. So what happens is all these people gave their NVIDIA stock. So if you're trying to manage all this, I'm one of 10 people who gave NVIDIA last month. They don't know, like, yeah, we got some NVIDIA stock. We don't know whose is whose. And then it's really stressful for the gift processing team, or really stressful for the donors. So those that have some experience and they've tasted enough stock gifting to say this is really hard. And by the way, every time when a donor has a problem and we don't know what to tell them, like, hey, as a nonprofit, we're not super fluent in stock gifting speak. Donors like, I submitted it, but yeah, did you get my stock? Well, we don't know. We don't think so. Well, how come? Well, we don't know. Talk to your broker. And then the donor's like, well, this is not fun. It's a bad experience. I don't really want to do this again. I'll just write you a check or credit card because it's easy. So one of the things we do is that I think is unique is we take responsibility for the success of each gift. So when a donor initiates that gift through us, through our tool, through either our app or through chat, or we even do what we call white gloves, where we'll actually manually, facilitate us and supply them with the information they need to execute the gift. We track it. If it doesn't arrive in 5 days, we're following up with the donor to find out, did the shares leave your account? If not, let's find out why. Your broker may be sitting on it for some reason. And that's and then we let the nonprofit know, hey, we're researching it. We're with the donor. We service them. No one has to wonder and wait. We're proactive in trying to do that. And that's what I think allows us to have a really high success rate in terms of successful gifts, because every gift matters. You can't drop a donor, in the grease and expect them to want to do it again. Like, every gift matters. So you have to ensure the success, no matter how small or large, because small ones can precede really big ones. So I can tell stories about that when we talk about success stories, but that's really it. It's either access or efficiency and scale, one of the two, with more transparency, lower cost, and more scalability.
Well, you had a nice segue to my next question, which is to share an example of a nonprofit who has signed up with Donate Stock and what happened with their fundraising.
Yeah. So we have some big name stories like our case studies. Probably our best case study document is World Central Kitchen. They're all over the news. Jose Andres and his team, like they're literally just amazing group, to support. And we're very proud to be their extension of their team as their stock gifting, processor and their platform. But in their first year, with us, the stock increases from just over 1% of proceeds, almost 9%. And that's indicative of where they should be. If you think about, again, let's say you have 1,000 donors, and let's say 100 of them are major gift donors, all of them own stock. And they're giving the gifts on average are 10, 20 times larger than cash or credit gifts. Last year, the average stock gift was $7,900 that we processed. That's normalized. Actual gross number was like $8,500, but if you eliminate some of the really big ones, it's about just under $8,000. The average cash gift is about $135 online. A major donor might write a check for $2,500, $5,000, but they're giving $10,000, $15,000 in stock because it cost them $2,000 10 years ago. They're thinking in terms like, here's $10,000 of NVIDIA stock about 5 years ago. It cost me $800. In my mind, like I'm just sharing my gains with you, so I can give you much larger gifts. It's tax advantage. So that's a great story. Shriners Children's Hospital is another kind of really exciting organization to work with. It's a 125-year-old organization. As they say, like it takes a while to get moving, but once they do, they move pretty well. And they last year on our platform, they increased stock gifting sevenfold over the previous year. So they kind of dipped their toe in the water in 23, 24. They had a really great year. I think 25 is going to be really a watershed year for stock gifting. But even smaller organizations, local orgs. I met this morning. I'm here in Dallas with one of our clients, YMCA of Greater Dallas. And they've been on the platform now, I think, 3 years. And every year they continue to grow. And they have some board members and major donors that just make recurring large six-figure gifts to them. And once you use our platform the first time, it takes 5 to 7 minutes to initiate the gift and provide your brokerage info. Once that's done, it takes 2 minutes. What would take me 3 days now can be done first time in 5 to 7 minutes, or subsequent gifts are fast. So there's just so many, really great success stories of nonprofits saying, you know what, to the donors, if you own stock, here's a more tax advantage way to support us with a pre-tax gift, sharing your gains with us. And once the donors realize, like, I didn't know I could do this, I didn't know these benefits were so amazing and it's so easy, why would I not? It's really financially irresponsible to donate cash if you own appreciated securities. Because if nothing else, you can at least give the nonprofit the money that would have been paid in taxes. So it's like, even if you're giving the same amount, let them keep a larger share of it.
What does Donate Stock do to help nonprofits increase their gifts of stock?
Yeah. So we have a methodology we call it the 3 I's. So first is you have to implement our button and put some content on your site about the benefits of stock gifting. Most donors are not aware of the benefits. If you ask 10 donors, major donors, do you donate stock? No. Are you aware of the benefits? The answer is probably not. And I found this out when I was starting the company, talking to investors to go get funding. And I was talking to very affluent people, accredited investors, had no idea. And I was like, they're like, why don't I know about these benefits? I'm like, well, you should talk to your financial advisor. One guy says, I have 2 advisors and neither of them have ever brought this up to me. I was like, well, go ask him. And then sure enough, he asked him, he's like, yeah, they're very encouraging of it, but they just never proactively brought it to my attention. There's reasons for that. But so what one is just, if you explain the benefits to them, then you can change their way of giving, and there's gratitude there because you're the one that actually introduced them to it. So that's the first I, is introducing. The second I is implementing. The second I is introducing to your donors, like is letting them know. And this is where, like, through email communication, we've seen a lot of different ways. Do a press release, say we're open for stock gifting now. It's easy, it's fast, it's safe, it's free for you as a donor to share your gains with us to make a tax advantage gift of stock. So you have to introduce it to them, and then you've got to integrate it into your messaging, because you can't change behavior with one message. The old adage in advertising is you have to tell somebody 7 times for them to actually remember it, for it to resonate. And so you have to just weave that into your communications. because we've been programmed for the last 20 plus years to go to a website. We see the red donate button in the upper right corner. We go right to it, we click it, and we're immediately in a credit card transaction. We're already now in a transactional conversation, like give to us on your credit card. Or if you want to fill out this, you can ACH your info, ACH cash to us. Rather than saying, hey, there's a lot of ways to give to us. Do you have a DAF? You should get, it's easy to give to us from your DAF. Do you own appreciated securities? Do you other ways to give? Do you want to do planned giving? Do you want to donate your car? Do you want to donate your house? Do you want to donate even cryptocurrency? Like there's some people out there who actually might do that. So it's really, you need to be like integrating multiple ways to give. And it's not just about stop it anyway. I mean, there's one of the things, we work with like Classy, for example, like they're really big on, meet the donor where they are. That's kind of their mantra. That means to your donor, how do you want to support us? The answer is yes, we can accommodate that. And yes, it's easy. Because if it's not, I mean, we've been spoiled by online, the Amazon experience. We expect things as consumers, as purchasers or donors, to everything to be super easy. If it's hard, we're gonna revert to the least friction, the easiest path. Like, what's the easiest way to support you? That's what I'm going to do. So if you say, yes, you can donate appreciated stock to us, we need you to fill out this form for us. Now you have to go to your broker and fill out a form for them. And then you have to figure out how to get it to them. And we'll keep an eye out for it. Donors are like, I don't have time. Like, that just sounds like a lot of work. I'll just do a credit card. Here's $1,000. Could have given you 10, but I don't want to do all this work. So that's that, integrating that message into your communications with your donors, so they're always seeing other ways to give. We have kind of best practices that we walk clients through. We have live like playbook sessions, where I'll actually go in and give them really recommendations. Show up twice a week on Mondays and Wednesdays at 12 Central, Tuesday, Thursday, and we'll say, okay, let's look at your website and provide recommendations to improve your donor, your communications, how clear it is, how visible it is. Because if people are just going right to your donate page, hitting your credit card form, you've lost the opportunity to increase the size of that gift and create a more of a recurring giving pattern through gifting assets that are much more tax advantaged. So those are the three things we do. We try to orient them, get them comfortable with the platform and the tools, and then educate them on how to introduce it to their donors, stakeholders, and how to make that very apparent and really deliver that message over time with frequency to get the resonance needed to increase giving size and increase recurring rate of stock gifting.
I totally agree about giving donors different options. And my favorite example that I share with my clients is KERA. And you go to their donate page, there's 9 buttons that you can choose on different ways to give: stock, cars, cash, whatever. So yes, definitely that's a message that I really, like to preach to, like I said, give the donor the best experience so they'll come back.
Yep. And because you can't take it for granted. You've seen retention rates. The latest, what Giving USA and marketing effectiveness or fundraising effectiveness project last year's study was only 60% of recurring donors gifted, made a recurring donation. And these are existing donors in 23, and only 18% of new donors made recurring gifts the next year. Like, those are terrible attrition numbers, right? There's no other way to put it. And they're still giving. They're just giving to someone else who's doing a better job of delivering a message, maintaining mind share and resonance, and making it easy for them to have a good donate giving experience. Most organizations, like you mentioned, give stock reactively because they have donors or board members like, I can only give you stock. Like, that's the only way you're getting my donation. Okay, we will accommodate that. And our response is, that's great, but you're scratching the surface. Stock should be 10% of your proceeds, not 1%. And that's the opportunity. It's a huge unlock opportunity. And I think now is super timely as we go and, especially I've met with like 2 organizations today that do rely on federal grants. And guess what? Those are very much at risk now. Like, the idea of federal funding for nonprofits, that's next 4 years. Proceed at your own caution, with caution, because I don't see it. I think this is just, they're going to be looking for budget cuts everywhere they can, and that's going to be right up there on the chopping block. So you've got to diversify. You have to say, okay, where are the big untapped sources of funding. Nothing is bigger than stock, except maybe, DAFs. Again, DAF, there's 250 billion in DAF assets sitting there waiting to be distributed. So ask for stock, ask for DAFs, then ask for cash, because that's going to be much smaller gifts.
Right, right. How many people in the U.S. actually own stock, and what is the demographic breakdown?
Yeah, it's ironically, it's impossible to know exactly how many investors there are. Like, it's not out there. But they have, all the brokerages report how many accounts they have. There are surveys that they extrapolate how many people own. What you don't know is how many people actually are active investors versus have it in their 401k or their IRA, like mutual funds, et cetera. What we've typically, what the most conventional thinking is around 50 plus million active investors, people who are actually trading, investing, and buying stocks, mutual funds, ETFs. So assume it's that. I mean, again, this latest poll we saw said there's around 168 million, but a lot of those, it's in the retirement fund. They're not going to donate from that. So let's exclude them. But there's 50 million that own 50 trillion in marketable securities right now. And everybody, yesterday, as we sit here, the market hit another all-time high, the S&P, and anybody that's been in the market for more than a couple of years is sitting on big gains, and they're probably thinking about, how do I diversify my concentration? So think about this: if 5 years ago you bought 5 stocks, you put $10,000 in each of them, and one of them was NVIDIA, that $10,000 is now worth $120,000, and the others might be worth $40,000 if they've quadrupled in 5 years, right? But it's worth, so you're like, I had way too much NVIDIA. So my financial advisor is saying, you need to take some gains. You need to diversify your risk. You have too much concentration. If NVIDIA misses earnings and gets crushed, like, you're going to feel it and you're going to be really upset. So what do? I can sell it, and I'm going to pay a huge tax rate on it, especially if I live in bluer states where they have not just a federal capital gains tax, but state taxes can be up to 12% in some states. Or I can donate it. And so I think that there's a lot of people out there that have assets that have appreciated, that are thinking about, what do I do with these highly concentrated positions, that are not aware of the benefits. And this is where there's so much opportunity for nonprofits to just let their donors know, we take appreciated stock, and it's much more tax advantage, and it's easy. And once you can deliver that message to them, and you can't send in one email assuming, we know not everybody reads all of our emails, right? Look at open rates. They're maybe 30%, 40% if you're really good. Your click-through rates are maybe 5% of that. So it's really, everyone's overexposed, way too much information. So you just can't, there's no silver bullet. You just tell them once, expect to see all the results. You have to tell them over and over and over. But like I tell organizations, like, your donors own stock. You just haven't had a conversation with them. I did not make this up, but I do love this quote that, fundraisers spend 90% of the time chasing 10% of the donors' assets. Like, they're all thinking, like, what's easiest, cash or put on a credit card or a check? Those are the least, those are going to be the lowest common denominator value gift they're going to get. Like, the bigger gifts are going to be assets, share in their assets, and aligning their financial objectives with their philanthropic objectives, not transactional, you're another bill on my credit card next month, but I'm actually going to invest in you by sharing my gains with you, and give you something that might be worth 10 grand. In my mind, I know I paid 800 for it. So I feel pretty smart giving that to you. And I'm going to save $6,000 in taxes on it by avoiding the tax. So it's a win-win-win if you just have that conversation. And to answer your question, like, your donors, every nonprofit's donors own stock. Not all of them, but a big chunk of them, especially those people that are, if they're giving more than $5,000 a year in cash, you can be quite confident they own a lot of stocks, ETFs, mutual funds. They're just not aware of the power they have with that.
Again, you've kind of provided a segue to my next question, and that is, how can nonprofits identify and cultivate who's already in their database, but also more people who have stock to give?
Yeah. The first one's easier because they know who gives what levels, right? Again, major, mid-level donors, vast majority of them are going to own appreciated securities if they're over 50. So we have some pretty good data about donors. We've actually done some demographic and a little bit of behavioral analysis, socioeconomic and behavioral analysis of our donors. They generally skew 55 and older, They're homeowners. They are 80% are college or graduate degrees. So educated homeowners over 55 is kind of your sweet spot. And they're people who also been in the market long enough that they've had compounding of their gains over years. So they own a lot of stock. And they're at the stage of life where they are thinking more about, giving back and their legacy, and they maybe achieved their financial security. Now they're in a better position to give. There's a lot of younger donors that give stock too. They just don't have the assets to give yet, right? A 35-year-old, like, it's great that they're donating stock, but they're donating $300, whereas a 55-year-old might be donating $30,000. And so it's a different, they're a different level. But there's, like I said, there's trillions of reasons why you should be asking them. And there's no downside. Like, what's the downside to, making them aware? The second one, how do you go out and find new donors, appreciated stock? It happens. So one of the things that is really interesting about in our platform, so a lot of our donors come to us because they might be on the World Central Kitchen site or the Shriners site or the Dallas Wise site, or we have close to 3,000 nonprofit customers now. And then they make a gift through us. And then at the end of it, we're like, you can donate to any charity at donatestock.com. We have 1.5 million nonprofit pages. So we're just like any donor advised fund. You can donate through PayPal giving, through Blackbaud Giving Fund, to any nonprofit, right? Because they're a pass through to that organization. When you do a Facebook fundraiser, you're giving to PayPal Giving Fund. PayPal then is a DAF, which is then sending the cash to the charity. And they have, I think, 120,000 in their database that they can give to. So we're like that. So you can donate your stock to our DAF, and then we will contact that nonprofit and say, guess what? You've got a donation. Steve Latham just donated this to you. We need you and what we ask them is, we need some KYC and AML compliance information just to verify, that we are sending to the right people. We like ACH. We don't like sending checks because invariably checks get lost. So, like, provide us your ACH details. You don't have to use us. There's no fixed fee. There's no upfront fee. You can just get started. And we will just, send you this money. But we end up introducing a lot of nonprofits to new donors through our platform because the donors said, that was easy. Who else can I give to? Oh, you have my local Y. Oh, you have this SPCA chapter. Oh, you have this environmental group. I will donate to them. And so we end up driving a lot of first-time donations to nonprofits through just by making it available to our existing stock donors who are already registered on our platform.
Does Donate Stock also accept gifts of bonds or donor advised funds?
We don't. Bonds are harder, not as fungible as a stock or a registered ETF or mutual fund. We don't do DAF distributions. Those are, there's a few ways to do that. They could do it through one, the donors can log into their Fidelity Charitable to do it, or their DAF account to distribute. Two, they can use a lot of the companies like Chariot has a good app for DAF distributions. Fidelity actually has a product called DAF Direct, I think it's called, where they have like Fidelity Charitable, Schwab Charitable, and maybe one other, I forget which one it is, where if you have any of those accounts, you can just donate to that charity from your DAF to that button. So there's a lot of ways to do it. They definitely should be asking for DAF. We're just not in that space.
Explain the process a donor goes through to gift a stock through Donate Stock.
Yeah. So it's pretty easy. So if you see our button on a nonprofit site, or you go to our site and say, hey, there's a charity I write checks to, and I'd rather give them stock, you can do that through our website. So you can go to our site, search for that charity by the name or the EIN, and we'll have a page for them that you can donate your appreciated stock. So it's pretty easy. Like, you register, you tell us who you are, name, email, phone. I think those are the three things we get. Then you provide your brokerage information. So what's important to know is, like, we don't ask for login credentials. We're not asking you to log into your brokerage account where all your family's, all your financial assets are through a nonprofit website. That's kind of a non-starter. But we just need the information that's on the front of a check: account name, account number. And then the next screen, you just select this, type in the ticker of the stocks or mutual funds or ETFs that you want to donate, and the number of shares. You have options that the accounting of it. Do you want to donate like your first in or your last in, or the high cost or low cost? So we allow you to choose that, like first in, last, or specific lot. And then if they have designations, we have a drop down for that. So like William and Mary, for example, University Foundation, they have 4,000 designations. Like you can donate to, men's track resurfacing fund, right? Or the STEM scholarship, for the Southeast U.S. Like I made those up. So those aren't actual designations, but they have so many, right? So you can just type to search for the fund you want to designate to. It could also be if it's a fundraiser, like an event, like a walk or a run. You could also choose the person that you want to support, their team. Like I'm supporting this person in this event, and then and then the last screen is checkout. They review it, say yes, I want to do 20 shares of Microsoft to this organization, and maybe 5 shares of Tesla, and they approve. They click a button, approve terms of service, sign with their trackpad, their finger, and hit submit. So what happens then is we take their information. So this all takes like 5 to 7 minutes. If they've already registered with us, we already have their brokerage information, it takes 2 minutes. They just say, yes, I want to use my Schwab account, Apple 10, submit, and it's literally 1 to 2 minutes. So we take that information, we then submit to their brokerage, the donor's brokerage, a form in the donor's form. So if they're a Schwab account, we send a Schwab form. If they're Merrill Lynch, we send Merrill to their brokerage, to the transfer office, and instructing them to transfer X shares of Y stock to this nonprofit account. And so that's what we do. And then we track it, because then it goes through this archaic DTC transfer system that was never really designed for stock gifts. It's just what they use. And then the stock eventually shows up in the brokerage account of the recipient. And if probably 95% of gifts we process through our donor advice fund, through Donate Stock Charitable, even for our large accounts. We initially created it for the small ones, as mentioned, that have been kind of excluded because it couldn't get a brokerage account. But even our largest accounts, our largest nonprofits, like that, we don't want to touch the stock. If you can just, you sell it, you reconcile it, you acknowledge it, send us the cash. Like we just want the cash. And the World Central Kitchen is a great example of that. They started receiving the stock, and they literally were having to hire temps to process stock gifts. And we said, we can do this for you at no incremental cost. Let us do this. Like, great. So we've saved them over, 1,000 people hours a year plus, because it's like 3+ people hours per gift. If you think about it, someone's got to sell the stock, someone has to then log it, someone has to go talk to the development team, like whose stock might this be, because we don't know, their name's not on it. And then there's internal communication. Then someone's got to account for it. It's a lot of people touching it, and then they transfer the money. And that's assuming they have all the donors' information. If they don't know who it is, if it's a mystery gift, that number just explodes, because then they're stressed out, like whose stock is this, waiting. So we handle all that for them. So we try to just make it automated for the donor, super easy, like a PayPal experience. And then we, on the back end, it's just make it as much like a traditional payment processing, easy, efficient, very low touch for the nonprofits, and allow them to scale it without having to touch it. And that's really, kind of the two sides of the value prop.
So how long does it take for a nonprofit to receive the proceeds from the stock gift?
Sure. We're pretty quick. So we have two different, it kind of depends which plan they're on. Our basic plan is if we receive stock this week, we will send those proceeds to you the week after next. So basically about 2 weeks. If you are on our premium plan, where you pay a low monthly fee, as low as I think it starts at $79, we will pay you next week, so you get paid faster. So we have a little bit of float. What I like to point out is that interest that we earn on that covers our DAF expenses. It allows Donate Stock Charitable to pay for accounting and compliance consulting and all the stuff to register in all these states as a charitable organization. So it really just helps our 501c3 become a little more self-sufficient. It's not like we're actually bringing money in the for-profit side. So that's what it does, kind of helps make it more sustainable. But that's, we pay pretty quick compared to a lot of DAFs that will sit on it for, months. There's, I won't say names because I don't want to, it's not that kind of discussion, but there are others who process stock gifts will literally sit on it for 90 days. And that's painful. You're like, wait, you're sitting on our $50,000 gift. Like, we need that money now. Like, this is our terms. We pay every 90 days. So, yeah, we're 2 weeks at most.
Does a nonprofit know that a gift of stock has been given before they get the money?
Yes, absolutely. When it's initiated, we notify the donor and the nonprofit. So the donor gets confirmations it's been initiated, and we let the nonprofit know, hey, this gift was just initiated with the donor's name, the stock, and the approximate value. And then we value it based on the value when it's received. So it can change a little bit between that time. So we say the estimated value is $10,000. It might be $10,050 or $99.85, depending on what it is, what happens to the stock in the time that it goes through the transit.
So we're at our last question, and it's one that I like to ask all of our guests as we end our conversation, is what is the one thing you want our listeners to remember from our conversation that will help them with their gifts of stock or fundraising or anything?
10%. Stock should be 10% of your proceeds, not 1%. And it's easy to get there. If you think about if 10% of your donors made 1% of your donors made 10x larger gifts of stock, you get to 10%. It's really easy. The math is quite easy. It just takes a little bit of work. You got to put a stock gifting button on your site. You got to put a note about the benefits on there. You've got to make ways to give visible, and then inform your donors. You do those few steps, and we'll help you. You'll see, recurring stock giving, for years to come, at incremental cost of a few cents per dollar. It's hard to beat.
Steve Latham, founder or co-founder?
Co-founder and CEO. Yeah.
Co-founder and CEO of Donate Stock. Thank you so much. This has been very informative, and I just hope you have every success with this. Thank you.
Thank you.